morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. Hope everyone's doing well this morning. It's morning for me. It was an early morning this morning. So it got me thinking to the expectations that we put on ourselves and that every human out there, I think, is feeling in one way or another. Expectations is a piece that really can affect our mental well-being, and I think it was and is relevant that we just went through Mental Health Awareness Day and really truly respect how much we are communicating, how much we are bringing into focus. Um, Really, sometimes the pieces in the mental emotional health that possibly in our past and we've always just kind of dealt with or um, haven't talked about as much. And I just wanted to kind of contribute in a very small personal way. Expectations is a very powerful component that a lot of us put on ourselves and put on others, and ultimately with the goal of, I think the goal behind expectations, or I believe the goal behind expectations, is that it's meant to propel us forward. It's meant to kind of whip us into taking action and doing something about a scenario or an issue that we have, or um, you know, trying to make others do better and trying to make ourselves do better. And we get into this mindset and this constant rhythm of always setting possibly very unhealthy and very um, unrealistic expectations. And again, it's a pattern I have noticed that if you happen to be a person that sets a lot of high expectations for others, usually that internal mindset and that internal talk for yourself is extremely, so whatever you set for those expectations for others, you set for yourself tenfold. So it's, I know in the past it's given me compassion, or at least a little bit of understanding around around the concept of expectation. Like, why do we do that? um it is something we all do, just the same as judgment, just the same as, it is a component and a piece of, I feel, the ego mind, the mind that is there protecting us. It's collecting information around us, and it's coming to its own conclusion, whether that happens to be fact based or realistic based, or whatever the case may be. A lot of the time, it's that component of, what do I want? What do I need? And how do I get there? And who are the people that can help me get there? And if those people, or if I'm not able to trust or ask for help, how much do I need, or how much can I do of myself, or ask of myself, or expect of myself? And it's an interesting balance. I'm just going to kind of leave that little intro there. The expectation is a slippery slope. It has the opportunity of possibly, and again, I say that word possibly, allowing us to get to a goal with like a little bit more motivation. However, I also really truly have begun to understand and feel that it can sometimes almost hinder us and kind of almost put us backwards in a way. And and um and I feel that that's partly because of the expectation of just the heavy, and the expectation of, how it's making us feel when we are creating a story about someone who is letting us down, or creating a story about someone who isn't doing things the way we think they should. Or, a lot of the time it can be camouflaged with trying to be helpful, trying to be of service. And it's very interesting. Every human, every person, every unique soul has the opportunity of doing things in a very diverse, very different way. And I feel that it's actually part of our mission to slowly peel ourselves away from judgment or peel ourselves away from expectation, because I do feel like they kind of have a little bit of a mirror image going on. And when we do, it's more about the observation of witnessing someone else doing something different than how we would have done it, and not going from a place of they're doing it wrong, they're doing it inefficient, they're doing it blah 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 blah. These are all the mindset pieces that kind of kick in and can make us feel frustrated and make us feel like a multitude of different feelings depending on the individual, really. And I just wanted to kind of create a little bit of space today. Yesterday I went into a little bit of gratitude. Today I think piggybacking on that, really tapping into and touching onto mental health and just awareness of that, and how expectations can really create a little bit of a cycle or a ball of feeding into that sometimes mental health and those emotions that can feel so overwhelming, or that they take over, and that at times it feels like have we don't have the ability to control. Or I use control because control can be a beautiful asset and an ally, and it can also be a real hindrance and again another component of heavy that we put on ourselves and we put on others. So using words that are interchangeable are fascinating in my opinion, just because depending on how you're using the word, or how your meaning behind the word is it can change the whole tone. So in this particular case, you know, to be able to feel our way through a situation by allowing others to be exactly who they are and how they need to show up in that moment is a very beautiful exercise. It's an exercise because it takes conscious and appropriate timing. It takes the ability to be able to just see the individual and not see what you need out of that individual or what you want out of that individual. You don't want them to act a certain way, be a certain way, think a certain way. You're just allowing them to be exactly who they are without expectations. And that's an interesting component because that frees you, and it really does. I'm going to say that it frees you from so much of that heavy of another person. It begins to release some of the binds that bound you within your own mental state, within your own mental expectations. Giving compassion and being able, like, literally every person that comes into our world, into our life, is a gift and is a reason for us to be able to look at ourselves and see, how do I treat myself? I'm treating this person this way. How do I treat myself? That it's this complete loop. And when we are aware of how we treat another, it gives us the opportunity to then bring it back on ourselves, and how am I treating myself? Not that it's always about us. That's not necessarily what I'm trying to grasp at here, but it's this loop of, okay, you know, I am recognizing and realizing I'm getting frustrated with this person, or this is getting triggering, or I want this person to do it this way. Here, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to just give them space and allow them to do it in their own way, and be their own person, and all these other pieces. It's immediately kind of almost, or it can be an immediate kind of like, ooh, like heavy that you put on them, whether you're using words or not. So we are talking about the energetic field of communication, our body language, how we are thinking. We may feel safe in this idea that whatever we're thinking is not being brought forward to the other individual, or to the other group, or to the other, fill in the blanks, our family members, our child, our, truly fill in the blanks to any encounter that you have. However, I strongly disagree with that statement. There is a very powerful, very subtle, but yet tangible exchange within us, and I believe that all humans can feel that. I know some have maybe a little bit more intuitive piece, or maybe they feel into it a little bit more. I'm not 100% sure on that. I can only go through my experience within this particular time and space. Yet I do, and I have witnessed and understood that tapping into this subtle language, expectations, is a huge decipher almost on how someone's going to respond to any given scenario. And I recognize this in my own self, in my own world, and just recently doing renovations and doing some components on my space, my sacred space, which is really, I use those words with intention, because in order for me to be able to do the work that I do, to be the person that I feel I can be, we are all working on ourselves. I need to have a safe space that, is functioning and not broken, and has a space, has a feeling to it that not only cultivates and begins to kind of resonate healing, because that is my ultimate goal within my space, is it's healing for myself, and it's calming for myself, but it's also healing and calming for any beautiful person that comes into my world. So these are expectations that I have put on myself, but it's also got its benefits. Like, there's reasons to those needs. Those are needs. And sometimes when we go through shifts and changes and big, huge growing patterns, which I do feel always and will continuously happen through big life changes. So, heartache, big moves, or any kind of move, really, any type of renovations, anything where our environment, where we are needing to change and expand, expectations ultimately come to that space, and possibly they meet us there with a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear, even if it's kind of a visceral fear, meaning that it kind of takes its form or takes its shape inside our body. And then again, because it can feel so overwhelming, a lot of the time we can project it outwards. We can project it onto others. We can project it into an environment without even using our words, which is what I was trying to get to or explain earlier. Eh, these expectations have a way of, just within our body language, just within our energy, kind of rippling outward, and it can hinder us from making forward progression. So I do believe there is some really, like, incredible value to being able to start to look at, do I set expectations? I will answer that. Yes, you do. How do I set expectations? What is the parameter of my expectations? Meaning, what is my ultimate goal out of setting these expectations? And again, just using a little bit of a recent event for myself, I think that kind of got me to start to think of it. Was I was doing some little house renos and little updates, and kind of fixing things that needed to be fixed in my home environment, and a pattern came up for me, and it was a pattern of expectation and feeling triggered, and not fully being able to be myself throughout the process, because I needed to kind of almost put on this shell of protection, that I put on automatically for my own past experiences within any type of renovation. Anytime that my space was feeling very not safe, I go into this militant. I can't think of a better descriptive word. A militant slash high expectation slash needing to get things done. Very, very, very important to make sure that timeline. And I think a lot of people in renovations can appreciate this, or any type of big move. It's like, we are getting this done. We need to go into, like, focus mode so that we can get to the final outcome. So then we can move forward, we can relax, and then move on with our lives. And there are needs to that. But the piece that I really wanted to bring up today is to get you to really look at yourself. What happens when I come into a scenario, and this could be an everyday scenario too, depending on the individual, when I bring expectations into my world and I begin to put a lot of heavy in it. I begin to put the heavy and expectations on myself, and all I'm feeling is what I'm not doing, and not celebrating, and not putting on the focus of what I am accomplishing, what I am doing well, and really allowing ourselves to begin to, appreciate. It starts with ourselves. Everything starts with ourselves. Appreciating ourselves, giving ourselves a break, allowing ourselves to really take that mental emotional tally, just the same as we are taking a mental and or sorry a physical tally every day with, oh, my aches and pains, my body feels. um, you know Sometimes we go onto the heavy of that as well, where we're taking in how our body is feeling, but it's all about, oh, I just feel exhausted, or, oh, I'm in so much pain today. And not always are we looking at a solution based outcome. So I think there's some plated with that as well. So just a little crossover in the expectation moral. The expectations is definitely more of a mental, emotional connection to ourselves, and tuning into that can help us to hopefully create just a little bit of space. And that space I speak about in a multitude of different ways, in a multitude of different um, arenas in our entire world, because it's everywhere, it's there, and it's helping us to begin to decipher what is working for us, and at its root, what is working for us and what isn't. And so asking ourselves the question, expectation, how do we handle it within ourselves, usually gives us a pretty good indicator on how we also hold it and handle it for others. So within all of that, within the expectation, within starting to really think about it, maybe yes, you're like, oh yes, I put heavy expectations on myself. There is no doubt. But possibly that you pause there and you're like, I don't think I put any expectation on others. I don't know. It's interesting. Or perhaps you're like, no, I expectations. I try to really actively work on that, and that's something that I've been, not needing to do in my life. That's a beautiful thing. I want you to go a little bit deeper though. What about in scenarios, like I said, um, some big changes and shifts? How does your personality shift and change with it? There's no downsides here. There's just questions. There's just bringing things to the surface and asking and being true and kind and realistic to ourselves. And for today, there's going to just we're going to create a little bit of space. We're going to allow those expectations to just not be so heavy, not be so right in our face, speaking and having the language and having the storyline that possibly could make us feel like not wanting to do it. And that's actually sometimes the outcome I have found of when we set really high expectations, when we're going, even when we do it to ourselves, but especially when we do it to others, they can feel that, and it will actually prevent them from wanting to help or wanting to be there and wanting to do things, especially if they have to do it in this and this way. Not giving them the freedom to do things in their own way sometimes leads to miscommunication. It sometimes leads to, not being able to be on the same page. It also really begins to activate and breed a certain internal conflict, whether it eventually makes its way out to having a conversation about it or getting very angry and triggered about it. But it ultimately, makes people feel like they're not being heard, not being respected, and that always ends up causing some type of hurt in the emotional, and ultimately causes quite a solid story and heavy story that can spark a mental kind of I guess an emotional and mental kind of degrading of, or allowing your vibration. Our vibration is ultimately in our control, but it's kind of giving and feeding into that lower vibration. So for today, we want to raise the vibration, and we want to begin to create some space and let go of those expectations. So to begin, we get those hands. So rubbing the hands quite quickly, just activating. And the very first thing that we're doing is we're just going to feel, as we release the hands, bring in and just notice that energetic field that we all have. And again, you can feel this out. You can attune yourself to it or not. It depends on what feels right to you. Ultimately, these are just tools, they're just ways of working through things. However, if you start to feel a little bit of energy, so it can be between the hands, it can just activating it, it can be then brought forward into other areas of the body. So once you really begin to attune yourself to that sensation, that feeling, I'm just going to encourage you to begin to notice where in your body you might be holding some heavy. So it can be in an emotional state right now. My heavy from the renos is definitely all in my head. Headaches is not usually something that is a part of my physical communication style. It's not usually something that my physical body deals with. However, over the last week or so of kind of, of going through renos, it's definitely been a common piece that has come up in my body as I get into like more of a heavy mental state. It literally affects my brain. It starts to get headaches in my temple, through the back of my neck, and up until I can feel the headache kind of almost radiating around through the head itself. And so what I'm doing here is I'm activating the hands, creating a little bit of healing touch. And then combined with possibly a little bit of pressure points that I myself, you know, have found very helpful, as well as it's okay if you don't have pressure points or if you don't have that understanding, simply just placing the hands on the body with the intention of releasing or creating space there, or beginning to allow your physical body to literally take a breath, to literally have some space. Going down into the jaw is also what I recognize. So as I begin to work through and really kind of create some self touch and some release for my, I don't have necessarily a headache right now. However, I can definitely feel all of the tension and tightness. It's there, and it's really activated at the moment. Even though it might not be causing a headache, I could feel that if I didn't do some of this self-care, that today would have been another day that I probably would have gotten a headache at some point. Or um, I can feel that I'm clenching my jaw. Possibly I just woke up, so possibly while I am sleeping, so not always aware of it, but you wake up and you can just feel tension going into the neck, going into the jaw, around to the back of the ears and to the base of the skull. These are all areas you can explore, and you can be amazed. I am always amazed at the physical, how I can, I activate my hands to activate the energetic kind of attuning that occurs within the pressure points within the hands themselves. So much healing occurs. We are all healers. That is our gift as being human. But attuning ourselves and really just exploring where our tension and tight spots are, where we are holding some of that tension, and ultimately where, when we have expectations of self, when we begin to create a storyline that feels really heavy, it can hold itself in our physical form. And as I said, mine started, and I could really feel it over the last week within my head, my neck, my jaw, and my throat. So as we're beginning to kind of feel out, and again, you can be working on the same area as myself, or you could be going elsewhere. somewhere else in the body that you happen to feel you're holding a lot of tension. Just kind of begin to cultivate a little bit of self healing. It's a little bit of a ritual. You begin to create a ton of intention, a lot of self care. And really, the biggest intention is just that you're creating some space. And I'm just going to end with just a little bit of throat. So, working on my neck, which again, I've been doing a lot of painting and a lot of physical labor as well as a lot of desk work. So, a combination of physical labor and desk work, not the ideal combination, if I'm being honest. I feel like my neck, my head, my jaw is also quite activated, and just in general, my upper body. So, I'm releasing some of those expectations, and how I'm actively doing that is, first of all, starting by attuning myself to where I'm holding the stress in my body, giving it some loves, giving it some attention, giving it some opportunity to release. Might not release right away, and that's okay, but at least giving it the opportunity to. And then as we begin to release and lean into that, releasing that expectation of self, we then also begin to have the opportunity to then take a look at our emotions as we're here. For me, it's the beginning of the day. What type of tone do I want to be bringing forward? There is going to be some opportunities today where some work needs to get done. Beautiful. I want to choose one or two things that need to get done. And then I'm going to, and this is going to be an active within the day, going back to and reminding myself of this moment, this little promise, this piece that I've given myself, where, like, I took some time this morning just to specifically. It's almost like you're talking to your inner mind before the day really gets going, and saying, listen, I know we're going to have some pieces happening today. I would enjoy, or I would like, so you're almost having a conversation with yourself. I would like to be able to handle it with ease and with grace. I would like to make sure that I'm observing what other people's needs are as well as my own. If I need to take a break, if I need to step back, if I need to take a complete disconnect from things, I am going to choose right here and right now, in the state that I'm in. I'm going to choose to allow that to happen. And this is the ritual, or this is the protocol that's going to allow me to do that. If I start to feel upset, I start to feel overwhelmed, I start to feel like I'm maybe even micromanaging, or that I'm trying to control other people and what they are doing. They know what they are doing. We're at a point in our project, we're at a point in life where, okay, express yourself, express what you need to have accomplished. If they have questions, really, really gear into, please come and talk to me, or please come and check in. I will check in once a day just to make sure that you don't have any questions, like being able to create conversation or communication like that also sometimes helps us to just know that there is an open communication. A lot of the time that we set expectations and that our expectations are diminished or are completely let down in one way or another in our story, is because there is a lack of communication, because there is a lack of just, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what the other person's thinking, and ultimately trying to find some type of either segue, or trying to make sure that whoever the lead hand is, the lead project manager, whether that's the owner or whether that's the whatever the case may be, is that ultimately that the goal is being accomplished in the way that it needs to be accomplished. So these are healthy communication components of getting a project done. Usually a lot of the time where the unhealthy heavy expectations occur is that communication is lacking, so, or sometimes off the table altogether, and this person this group of people, this, even individual for themselves isn't having even just this one-on-one conversation where it's like, okay, and if this happens, like you have these internal dialogues all day long, all the time. What about making it a conscientious dialogue that you start with yourself that just sets the tone for the day? When you know that you are going to be coming into some heavy situations or coming into some areas where you are, know yourself, are going to have some expectations that possibly could become a heaviness on your mental and your emotional state, set a tone for how you want to handle those scenarios, and then make your own unique kind of protocol, or even I use a lot of ritual in my life, and I use ritual because I find it's just an immediate calming space for me. And so you can utilize or start with mine where again I have these talks. I usually remind myself throughout the day. I always start with some type of, tea or water, because that is ultimately giving my body something that it needs. And usually when I go into go, go, go mode, it's also something that I always forget to give myself. So I usually say, okay, at this time, this time, this time, I'm going to do a regular check-in throughout the day. I'm going to get some tea or I'm going to get some water, and I'm just gonna hold it in my hand, and I'm going to take some space. I'm not going to be thinking about 10 different things or what everything that I need to get done, that others need to get done. Myself and my tea, a lot of the time, I'm a huge tea drinker. We're just going to have tea, and I'm just going to bring my intention and infuse my intention within the water, which is then going to infuse itself into my physical body as I'm drinking it. And it really does, it's a small little ritual that I do, but it really does have some power to it, because I've considered and I've begun to infuse that ritual with power. And you can do that with a multitude of other things that work for you. So that's just a little tidbit. And I'm also going to address, what happens if I just get going and I don't tune in, or I forget, or I start to do other things and it's just, I'm on a roll, so to speak. I'm going to call a little bit of, okay, yeah, but that is a choice, and that you already know where that road leads to. Possibly it leads to getting things done. Yet at the end of getting things done, does everyone feel connected and feel heard and respected? Or do you yourself, others feel, exhausted and like you're not having your needs being taken care of, and ultimately you're not being, you're not feeling, your mental and emotional health is suffering. In my personal opinion, and again, you will have yours, it is never worth your mental, emotional, and physical health. Don't ever put a goal or a concept or someone else's expectations, heavens, um, before your own mental, emotional, and physical health, because that is your sacredness, that is your space, that is your body, that is your mind, that you are, at sometimes can carelessly just give and and allow another person to have control of that, or to give up and let yourself be swayed by just these heavy expectations. And truly, it's long term, it's never going to be worth giving that up. And I'm saying that as a blanket statement, but it's kind of also a truth. It's a fundamental human truth. Yes, we are going to set high expectations. Yes, we are going to do A, B, C. These are going to happen. It is part of the human. I feel it is part of the human, figuring things out, that it's giving us an opportunity to work on it. But how are you going to work on it? And that's just what I'm bringing forward today. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed. And again, hopefully it activates and gets you to think about, how do I start my day? How and what kind of expectations do I put on myself? How and what expectations do I put on others? And what's working for me and maybe what's not? What can I create a little bit of space around?